Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here to take your source material, could be articles, notes, research, and really unpack the most compelling insights. We want to give you that shortcut, to being truly well-informed.
Absolutely.
And today, we're stepping into a pretty fascinating, maybe sometimes unsettling world. We're exploring the ideas laid out in Robert Greene's The Art of Seduction, based on the material you sent over.
That's right. And our mission today really is to be your guides through these concepts. We're pulling out the core ideas, the different types of seducers, their opposites too, and the specific tactics described in these sources.
All right.
It's about giving you a clearer view of these often hidden patterns, the dynamics that play out in human interaction. And it goes way beyond just romantic stuff.
Yeah, think of this as sort of uncovering some of the underlying currents in how people attract or repel and influence each other. It's definitely not a how-to guide.
No.
It's more about seeing the game, or maybe like the source calls it, the art.
And that really is the fundamental idea right from the get-go. Seduction, in this context, it's emphatically not about force.
Okay.
The source presents it as a skill, something, cultivated over time. It even points out how in, say, emerging societies, women who maybe lacked physical strength, well, they developed skill. Seduction became their power.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, they learned to sort of veil their charm, spark curiosity, master that tricky art of refusal that just, heightens desire.
Yeah.
Basically learning to arouse and direct the emotions of others.
So the core insight there is that influence isn't always about direct power or brute strength. It's more about finesse, strategy, influencing the emotional landscape.
Exactly. And going hand in hand with that is the idea that seducers, according to the source material, see life itself as a kind of theater.
Theater.
Yeah, they aren't bound by some rigid sense of self. They feel free to play roles, to embrace illusion, fantasy. And that's a really powerful contrast to most people who often feel kind of trapped, stuck in these limited, predetermined roles.
That's interesting, this willingness to sort of inhabit different forms, like Zeus in mythology, always shape-shifting. The text mentions their clothes, the settings they create, their words, actions. Everything has this slightly heightened, almost unreal quality.
It's true. It's like they invite you into a kind of living fiction almost. The seduction, in this view, becomes that meeting point, that blend of illusion and reality.
Mm.
And crucially, it rarely starts with obvious romantic moves. It begins with the seducer's character, the aura they project, stirring emotions in a way that feels almost involuntary, hypnotic even.
So the manipulation, if you want to call it that, happens more subtly, below the radar, because you're already drawn in just by their presence.
Precisely. They bypass your rational defenses by engaging the emotions first.
Okay, so that's the fundamental concept: seduction as art, as theater. But the sources also spend a good chunk of time on the flip side, identifying what actively repels people, the anti-seducer.
Yes, exactly. The qualities that push people away, according to this work. And the core insight here is that anti-seduction isn't necessarily about being, conventionally unattractive.
Right.
It's more about a fundamental lack of self-awareness, an inability to connect with the psychology of another person.
So while a seducer focuses attention outward, drawing you in, the anti-seducer is completely absorbed inward.
That's it exactly. They might be insecure, deeply self-absorbed, or just completely oblivious, to how they affect others.
Yeah.
And this lack of self-awareness, it translates into specific, really repellent behaviors.
Like what kind of behaviors does the source call out?
Well, pestering, being really imposing, talking excessively about oneself without showing any genuine interest in the other person, those are classic signs.
Okay.
And the source is pretty blunt here. It states there's no pleasure or profit in dealing with anti-seducers, and really advises you to recognize these traits in yourself too, and definitely in others.
A clear warning sign. Okay, so we have the core idea and the opposite. Now, the source material dives into these different types or archetypes of seducers using historical examples. These are fascinating. They really show different paths to achieving that alluring effect. Let's start with the dandy.
The dandy, yeah. What's powerful and unique about them is they don't quite fit in. They consciously create their own persona.
Right.
They're often delightfully uncategorizable, blurring lines, sometimes playing with traditional gender presentation. Think Oscar Wilde, just crafting his entire identity, or Marlene Dietrich blending masculine and feminine styles.
And that appeals because, why does that work?
Well, it hints at this immense freedom. It stirs up repressed desires in other people who feel confined by society's norms. The dandy's physical presence is often startling, memorable. And the source knows this really intriguing mix, a sense of physical heat, something overtly alluring, combined with this emotional coolness or distance.
That combination. Available, but also unattainable. Yeah, that makes sense. Makes them endlessly intriguing. Okay, different approach then. The natural.
The natural feels, well, effortless. Their appeal comes from spontaneity, openness, and often leveraging childlike qualities.
Childlike.
Yeah, the source points out the power of innocence,
Yeah.
framed not just as naivete, but as a kind of vulnerability or maybe misunderstanding of the world.
And that elicits sympathy. Is that the idea?
Exactly, sympathy.
Mm.
And often laughter, too. Sympathy and laughter can be incredibly seductive tools. There's even a variation, the spoiled child, who doesn't outwardly try to please, but has this undeniable independence that can make others want to sort of tame them or possess them.
Right.
Think of Josephine Baker's incredible lightness of spirit, or Charlie Chaplin's kind of pathetic naivete in his early roles, seeing the world through a child's eyes. The Force also mentions Cora Pearl, captivated not with beauty, but with her spirit, this air of being completely on her own terms.
It's that refreshing lack of pretension, maybe? The source also touches on the deliverer within this category, right? Someone who seems like a natural leader, brings people together.
Yes, like Malcolm X has mentioned,
Hmm.
they have an air of conviction, passion, that feels really genuine, uncalculated. They seem to effortlessly connect with people's deepest desires, or maybe their needs for change, delivering a message that resonates powerfully because it feels so authentic.
Fascinating how that naturalness can manifest in such different ways. Okay, moving to another type, the star.
The star.
Yeah.
Like Marlene Dietrich again, or Eva Peron,
Yeah.
they cultivate this ethereal, mysterious presence. They create a kind of haunting effect that can lead to obsession.
Obsession.
Yeah, because they seem unattainable. People interject their character. They make the star a part of their own inner world.
So if you can't actually reach them, they end up living inside your head?
Precisely.
Yeah.
The star is often presented as a cipher,
Oh.
a mix of real and unreal, sometimes with a deliberately vague look, or maybe an attention-grabbing style that makes them hard to pin down, but endlessly compelling. Think of Dietrich's distinctive look, or Warhol's dark glasses they make you project onto them.
Yeah.
Eva Peron's image became absolutely everywhere, but the real person was kind of obscured, which just fueled fantasies.
Okay, that gives us a good sense of the types. Now let's dive into the specific tactics described in the sources. These are the actual plays, the moves seducers make. One that sounds really counterintuitive is the power of strategic weakness.
It really is. The insight here is that appearing too strong or too obviously manipulative, well, it just raises defenses.
Makes sense.
But by appearing vulnerable, weak, or even totally enthralled by the target, you disarm them. Your actions suddenly look natural, emotional, not calculated.
So using things like, I don't know, tears or bashfulness isn't hiding a weakness, it's actually a tool.
According to the source, absolutely. Physical weakness can create this effect. Playing the victim is highlighted as a way to turn sympathy into affection, even love. The powerful example given is Catherine the Great. Apparently, she appeared before soldiers in just a simple dress, hair down, looking vulnerable, like a Madonna figure, and it garnered her immense support.
Wow, that's a striking image. Okay, another tactic involves creating illusion and confusing reality.
Yeah, people live so much in their daydreams, don't they? Their secret wishes. The seducer taps directly into these. The tactic is to create the illusion that the target can live out their dreams, their fantasies, through you.
And this bypasses reason, just goes straight for the emotions.
It floods them with emotion
Right.
and deliberately clouds their ability to distinguish between the fantasy you're creating and, well, actual reality. This is strongly linked to the ideal lover type who embodies those daydreams. But it's a fragile illusion, the source warns. It can shatter if harsh reality intrudes too much.
Right. Now, the strategy of isolation, that sounds much more deliberate, maybe even a bit darker.
It is. The insight here is pretty simple. An isolated person is far more vulnerable. This tactic involves slowly, subtly removing the target from their usual support system, their environment, friends, family.
Luring them into unfamiliar territory, essentially.
Exactly. A new layer, as the source calls it. This prevents outside influences or support from reaching them and keeps them disoriented, dependent on you. The source uses the rather chilling example of Lovelace isolating Clarissa in London, cutting her off from everything she knew, making her totally reliant on him.
Oof. That removes their safety net entirely. Okay, another intriguing tactic is tapping into the past, specifically affecting regression. What's that about?
This is about bringing the target back to earlier, often deeply pleasurable memories. And the most potent ones, the source suggests, are those tied to childhood and parental figures.
Parental figures.
Yeah, by positioning yourself in a kind of edible triangle where the target unconsciously becomes the needy child, you can stir very deep unconscious love.
And the source says those who seem most adult and self-possessed might be the most susceptible to this.
Often, yes, because they might be repressing those needs, or maybe longing for the comfort and freedom of childhood under all the weight of adult responsibility.
Ah.
And conversely, you can position yourself as the child, which can be seductive to those who have a strong protective or parenting instinct. Juliette Drouet, with Victor Hugo, is cited. She apparently mothered him, comforted him, made him feel like a little boy in her presence, forged a really powerful bond that way.
It's fascinating how those roles can be deployed strategically. What about stirring the transgressive and taboo? That sounds exciting.
Well, humans do have a natural curiosity about what's forbidden, don't we? Seducers can be powerfully alluring by leading targets just past social limits or elemental taboos, appealing to that darker, rebellious side we all kind of have.
Like hinting at something dangerous
Yeah.
or disrespectful of norms.
Precisely. Hinting at maybe a cruel streak, disregarding age differences, disrespecting marriage vows. These things make the experience feel thrilling, rare, exclusive. Lord Byron apparently leveraged his scandalous reputation and rumored forbidden affairs masterfully. Society might have disapproved, sure, but the hint of the forbidden drew people in. They saw him as this fallen angel they might redeem, feeding on the sheer excitement of the transgression itself.
That element of danger definitely adds spice. Speaking of mixing things up, the source talks about mixing pleasure with pain. That sounds complex.
It is, and again, counterintuitive. Being too consistently nice is seen as a mistake here. Constant kindness can become predictable, even boring.
Okay.
Instead, the tactic is to punctuate kindness with moments of pain, making the target feel maybe guilty, insecure, anxious.
Why? To create dependency.
Yes, partly dependency. And crucially, it heightens the emotional highs. The lower the lows, as the source puts it, makes or greater the highs. It adds an element of fear, which can be oddly exciting and can heighten the erotic tension.
Any examples?
Examples like Yang Kuei-fei's pattern of kindness and sudden bitterness, forcing the emperor to constantly win back her favor, or Conchita driving Don Mateo to frustration, interspersed with pleasure. The source explicitly states that a reconciliation after a conflict actually strengthens the attachment.
Okay, insinuation feels like a much quieter tool, but maybe just as potent.
Oh, it's incredibly powerful because it bypasses conscious resistance. Direct persuasion often fails, right? People resent feeling pushed.
Yeah.
Insinuation just drops subtle hints, casually disguised as innocent remarks.
And those hints are targeted at insecurities or desires.
Exactly. And because they're so subtle, their origin gets forgotten. They register unconsciously, and when the idea later surfaces in the target's mind, it feels like their own thought. It bypasses their defenses completely. It's described as a language that communicates directly with the unconscious.
Wow, that's quite insidious. Okay, another tactic related to deeply understanding the other person is entering their spirit or mirroring.
Right. The core insight here is that people are fundamentally narcissistic. Not necessarily in a bad way, but just absorbed in their own world, their own perspective.
Makes sense.
So the most effective way to draw them out is to temporarily become like them, a mirror image.
By adopting their moods, interests, ways of thinking.
Yes, adapting to them. This
Wow.
lowers their defenses because it makes them feel understood, validated. People love to see their own tastes, ideas, even their flaws reflected back in a flattering way. This validation just melts their inner wall. And once that happens, you can slowly draw them out of their shell and begin to influence them. The example of Zhu Onlai, subtly mirroring Chiang Kai-shek's moods, listening intently, initially saying little, then gently shifting the dynamic, it shows this in action. It's described as a form of insidious persuasion, almost like hypnosis.
Creating a triangle is a classic social dynamic, isn't it? But applied here as a tactic.
Yeah, this taps into that fundamental idea that desire is often social. We tend to want what others desire. So by introducing a third party, could be a real person, a past conquest, or even just implying other admirers, you create rivalry.
Making the target feel like they have to compete for you.
Exactly. It feeds their vanity. They want to be the one who wins you over, the preferred one. This gives you immense power, as long as you maintain a certain degree of elusiveness.
Gotcha.
The sources use examples like the Duc de Richelieu seducing two women in the same building and just leveraging their rivalry, or Lovelace playing Clarissa and her sister against each other.
Right. The emphasis on paying attention to detail also seems crucial. It's not just about the grand gestures then.
Often, no. The small, subtle details are far more charming and distracting than obvious efforts. Orchestrating sensory details, the right lighting, specific sounds, a particular scent, a perfectly chosen small gift tailored to their taste. These engage the senses and can distract the target from any underlying manipulation. The source calls this the sensuous effect or mesmerizing effect.
And there's almost a pampering quality to it, like anticipating needs.
Yes, exactly. Like a mother subtly anticipating and meeting a child's needs before they're even asked for. Pamela Churchill Harriman is mentioned as someone legendary for her ability to anticipate desires and create an environment perfectly tailored to her guests. It creates this deep sense of comfort and dependency, returning the target unconsciously to that state where their needs were just effortlessly met.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground on the tactics themselves. What happens as the seduction reaches its peak? The sources discuss delaying the climax and then making a bold move. How does that work?
Yeah, timing is absolutely key here. Once the target is clearly ready, holding back intentionally builds tension. It actually shifts the dynamic.
How so?
It makes the seduced person feel like they now have to pursue you. It makes them an active participant in the whole
But
thing.
you can't wait forever, presumably.
No, definitely not. Waiting too long can backfire. It might signal timidity, make the target doubt their own desirability, like maybe you're not that into them after all. So at the absolute right moment, a bold, decisive move is needed. And importantly, it should feel almost involuntary on your part, like the target's irresistible charm simply overpowered your hesitation.
So the bold move makes the target feel powerful because they believe they compelled you.
Exactly right. It gives them the pleasure of physical surrender, but also a significant psychological boost to their vanity. They feel like they won.
Okay. And finally, what about the art of the post-seduction? Once that initial peak is passed, how do you keep the connection alive, according to this?
Well, the source warns that familiarity is the great destroyer of seduction. That's the big challenge. Fighting against inertia, preventing things from settling into a predictable, maybe boring routine. You need to show that the seduction isn't over.
So how do you avoid that slide into just routine?
You have to keep the attention focused, keep proving yourself in new ways. The source suggests rekindling the flame through carefully managed anxiety, perhaps stirring a little jealousy, or strategically revealing new, intriguing secrets about yourself.
Keep them guessing.
Keep them guessing, yes. And it's also noted that a strategic ending or escape at the right moment, before the illusion completely fades and reality fully sets in, can be the ultimate way to maintain the mystique.
Like those examples given, Duke Ellington's theatrical departures after affairs, leaving behind this lingering charm, or Cristeta winning back Don Juan not by clinging, but by becoming forbidden fruit to him again.
Those are precisely the examples given. It's all about breaking predictability and maintaining that sense of wanting, that blend of presence and absence that really defines seduction in this framework.
Wow. We've just taken a really deep dive into some incredibly complex and, yeah, often provocative ideas about human interaction as presented in these sources. So let's tie this back. Why does understanding all of this, these types, these tactics, why does it really matter to you, our listener?
Well, I think it matters because these patterns aren't just limited to romantic encounters, right? Recognizing these dynamics gives you a really powerful lens, a lens through which to view persuasion attempts, power dynamics, emotional influences across all sorts of relationships.
Professional, social, familial.
Exactly. Professional, social, familial, and yes, romantic too.
It's almost like seeing the hidden wiring diagram of human connection, isn't it? You start noticing why certain people effortlessly attract others, or why some interactions feel, well, manipulative, or why some bonds are just inexplicably strong or volatile. It provides those aha moments about the underlying currents shaping the world around you. Gives you a degree of awareness, maybe even agency.
I think so. It's about moving beyond just reacting to others' behavior and starting to understand the psychological drives and strategies at play, whether they're being deployed consciously or often unconsciously.
Absolutely. So we've journeyed through the sources, starting with that core idea of seduction as an art rooted in skill in theater, contrasting it with the repellent nature of the anti-seducer.
Right.
We've explored archetypes like the self-created dandy, the seemingly effortless natural, including that deliverer type and the mysterious star. And we've delved into this fascinating, sometimes unsettling array of tactics. Strategic weakness, creating illusion, isolation, regression, stirring the taboo, mixing pleasure with pain, using insinuation, mirroring others, creating triangles, paying attention to detail, mastering the timing of bold moves, and even handling that tricky post-seduction phase.
We sincerely hope this deep dive offers you a new perspective, a kind of shortcut to understanding these intricate dynamics as they're described in the source material, and perhaps prompts you to observe the world around you with, fresh eyes.
Yeah, yeah. And to leave you with a final thought to ponder, just building on everything we've explored today, if seduction in this view is really the art of creating compelling illusions that confuse reality, well, how much of what we chase, what we desire, and even what we call connection in our lives is actually shaped by these subtle dances between what is real and what is merely desired into existence?